Um, so I was in New Zealand, and
Touching a kangaroo.
it was actually for like some sports ambassador program. So it was all about sports, right?
Sports and bastards?
Sports
Sorry?
ambassador.
Oh.
To be like, oh, hey, we're kids from the U.S. who play sports, and you're a kid from New Zealand who's play sports. Let's sports together, sports ball, stick ball,
Uh-huh.
that type of thing. Oh my god, my weapons are
So you
really
ended up breaking your arm because you're playing sports.
no. So a lot of the time we were doing um like big activities, right? And so we were going on an ocean kayaking tour thing, right?
Okay.
And we ended up having to. It's not a fake story, goddamn. And so we were going on a kayaking tour thing, and it was in the middle of the ocean. And it started storming like crazy, and so we had to like rush back to our hotel because it was going to be like a major storm type thing, and we couldn't stick around. Um, so then eventually we get back. The hotel's like somewhat like wet, like kind of. It's really wet everywhere in the hotel because it's like been storming. And so I just had eaten dinner. I was dinner. They had like a dining area, but it was on the uppermost floor of the hotel. So I just eaten dinner, and then I'm going down to my room, which is on the bottom floor. So I'm walking down the stairs, and I see that there's a pole above the staircase, like a horizontal hanging pole, and I'm like, oh my god, I can jump and grab onto this. And there's like other kids around. I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna be the kid. Man, I'm gonna be the coolest kid.
How old are you in this story?
Oh man, what like
Like
seventh
three?
grade or something? So I'm like, oh dude, I'm gonna be the sickest kid.
This happened a week ago.
Yeah, probably.
Don't you fucking lie.
And oh my,
Happened
this guy has
last
so
week.
much rocket launcher ammo. So I am. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do this. There's like kids behind me that are younger than me, and I'm like, I'm gonna be the guy. And so I go, I jump, I grab onto the pole. Because it's wet, I slip off. And this is on, like, there's stairs below me, right? I slip off, and my arm hits on the staircase and cleanly gets, like, broken in half. My humorist does. And yeah, all these kids are like staring at me because I'm on the floor, right? Because I hit the stairs and I roll down all the stairs and I'm on the floor of the bottom floor, and all these kids are looking at me like, "Oh, are you okay?" And I try and stand up. I try and like push myself off the ground with my arms, and because my arm is broken, my shoulder starts moving like crazy while the bottom of my arm isn't moving at all. And all these kids like start like, whoa, whoa, like one like really large guy who would like make fun of me the entire trip. He like puked. He had to run like go puke because it was like just so disgusting apparently. And I was like, oh shit, my arm's broken. Like it didn't hurt that bad, and I was like, god damn it. Um, so
Why
every
were you? Why? That's an interesting story. Why were you so afraid to tell
no,
us?
I'm trying to embellish it as much as possible right now. Um, so yeah, all these kids like there were some girls there too, so I was like pretty embarrassed. I was like, god damn it. So all these kids, girl and guys and stuff, are like, "Oh, this is really gross." One guy, the like biggest guy who was trying to be the toughest guy on the trip, like goes and runs and throws up, and then everyone else is sort of like, "Oh my god, I don't even know what to do." Um, and the girls are like okay with it compared to the guys. The guys sort of like just run off, and then they're like trying to help me out, like, "Are you okay?" and stuff. And they're like, "That was really retarded what you did." And I'm like, "Yeah, well, you're not the one with the broken arm. I think I would know it's retarded." And then, so basically the like counselors or whatever, the people like watching us, came over and they're like, "What happened?" And I was like, "Oh, the stairs were really slippery because of the storm, and I slipped." And like I told everyone, I was
Suckers.
like, I told everyone, I was like, "Don't you goddamn dare say anything." And so basically, I told the story that like I slipped, and that's how I fell down the stairs and broke my arm. And they were like, okay, but let's call your parents and stuff. This was the third day of a month-long trip, all about like doing a bunch of sports stuff. So you can't do sports stuff with a broken arm, right? And they're like, okay, we got to call your parents. You got to call your parents. So I call my parents, and I'm like, oh shit. This is when I was on like a really competitive soccer team, right? So I called my dad. And I'm like, yeah, I broke my arm, and I'm like almost crying, right? I'm like, and not because it was hurt, because it didn't hurt at all, but I was like crying because I was telling my dad, I'm like, oh my god, the soccer coach is gonna be so pissed off at me. And my soccer coach was a really black man from Brazil who didn't speak English. And so whenever he wanted me to do something, he would just yell at me in Portuguese until I like somewhat understood what he wanted. So basically I was like, oh my god, he's going to yell at me for days about how I can't play, but I won't know what he's saying. And he's probably like calling me names and all this other stuff. And I'm going to have to like stand there and take him yelling at me. And my dad's like, oh, don't worry about it. He won't care. And eventually he didn't care. He was just like, oh, are you okay? Will you be able to play later on? And I was like, yeah. But anyways, I was like crying because I thought I was going to get a huge like ass whooping.
Beating.
Yeah, an ass whooping verbally.
I'm going to break that other arm.
Yeah, basically. But all in Portuguese, and I wouldn't know what he was saying. But he just like grabs my arm and yells at me and breaks it. But I was like so terrified. And then eventually they're like, oh no, it's okay. But the main thing is, do you want to go home? Because, you know, this is a whole sports trip and stuff, and you're not going to be able to do much, and we're going to have to go from hospital to hospital, and I don't know how enjoyable it's going to be. And I was like, I'll stay, whatever. Like, the main thing is, I didn't want to, like, fly home, like, 14 hours or whatever by myself, and I was like, I'll just stay for another month doing nothing, if that's all right. And essentially, the rest of my trip was me watching all the kids do really fun things while I either sat there in the bus watching, talking to the bus driver for hours, or having to go to each hospital, because the trip was from New Zealand to Australia to Fiji, going around like a whole bunch of different cities, and each city I had to check into the hospital. Every city we moved to, I had to check into the hospital, and they all gave me from Fiji to Australia, or from New Zealand to Australia. This is what happened. And in New Zealand, they're like, gave me a cast and all this other stuff. Get to Australia, they're like, oh, they totally screwed up, man. And I'm like, oh, what are you talking about? And they're like, we're gonna have to take this cast off and re-break your arm. And I'm like, oh my god, son of a bitch. And so they cut the cast off, and like right there, without even like saying anything, the guy just like breaks my arm. And I'm like, oh my god, why didn't you tell me? And he just does it. He's like, oh, it's alright, it's fine. And then he's like, instead of a cast, we're just gonna take this strip of plastic and wrap it around your arm and put Velcro around it, and it'll be fine. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And he's like, no, it's fine, trust me. And so instead of a cast now, I have this like strip of plastic wrapped with Velcro around my arm, and it was just so annoying. I guess like the reason he did it was because like he knew I'd have to check into multiple hospitals to like see how the progress is going. And he's like, oh, I'll just make it easier for the doctors to look at the stuff. So I was like, okay, fine, whatever. So after that, eventually I was like, okay, I'm just so sick of not doing anything. I'm just going to try and play one of these sports. So my main sport was soccer, so I was like, okay, I want to try and play soccer with these kids, right? And we're playing soccer. Some stupid asshole trying to like be all cool and score a goal hits the ball as hard as he can. It hits me in my arm and re-breaks my arm again. And like I'm just like, oh my god! And then he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. And then everyone's like surrounding me, and I'm like, oh well, I guess I should just not play sports anymore at this like event thing. And then they like they have to redo it, and they give me another like plastic thing, crap, which is super annoying. And then we get to Fiji, they don't even know what the hell a cast is, so they're like, whatever. It was. I don't even know why I stayed. But by the end of it, it was all right because they gave me a free trip. I won Student Sports Ambassador of the Year. Because I stuck around and I wrote like an essay about me sticking around and how much it sucked. And they're like, all right, this kid deserves a free trip. We're giving him Student Sports Ambassador of the Year. And like it was me and some black chick from Georgia. And I was like, whatever. And my next trip,
You like got in the newspaper. They took a
yeah, I know. They like took a
even
picture.
the cast.
Basically, I didn't even have what I did. I had my arm under my shirt because I couldn't move my arm through my shirt because it hurt too bad.
Yeah.
So I just had my arm under my shirt, so it looked really awkward. And oh, it was just terrible.